Hey Patriots, my name is Nathan Roberts, and I'm here with my co-founder Daniel Poynter. We're starting a new organization called Save Heritage Indiana, and its only goal is reversing and ending mass migration in our great state. Briefly in this conversation, we want to talk about the state of mass migration in Indiana. We also want to talk about our new organization and what we can do to fix this problem. So, I'm sure we're talking with the Lieutenant Governor today, and I'm sure that he needs no introduction to many people in our state. But in case there's national people watching, can you briefly talk about your background, values, and how you came to be Lieutenant Governor?
Yeah, thanks, guys. Thanks for having me on. My name is Micah Beckwith. I've been Lieutenant Governor since January, got sworn in. Before that, I was full-time pastor, and I was a teacher of constitutional literacy. And I have always been somebody who thinks it's important for everybody to fight to defend liberty. And what that fight looks like might be very different from one person to the next, but mine was to speak truth. And I got real involved during the COVID lockdowns and standing up for people who didn't feel it was right that they were being forced to stay in their homes or fired from their jobs if they didn't get an experimental drug, a vaccine that they didn't want. And so things like that, I really started going on the front line, say, hey, I'll write your religious exemptions, I'll stand with you, I'll lobby for you, advocate for you. And that just kind of opened up the door for me to move further into the political world, to do it now as an elected official. And so I'm happy to be in the Lieutenant Governor's office, and it's been an honor of a lifetime. And I mean, we're dealing with all things, from just this morning, I was telling you guys, we sold a bunch of soybeans and corn to Taiwan. So it's over $6 billion worth, and now talking about immigration. So, and I just got done with some interviews on Christian nationalism, so what that means. So it's really fun. It's all over the place, but I really love it. Yeah.
Well, thank you for speaking with us.
Yeah.
My name's Daniel. Just a brief introduction. I grew up in Auburn, Indiana, and I live in Indianapolis, went to Purdue. For the last 5 years, I founded a nonprofit. It's a grassroots organization, statewide, focused on one issue. And I figured immigration is now my number one issue. So if I've done it before, I can do it again, only this time our grassroots organization is going to be bigger and more intentionally designed.
And my name is Nathan Roberts. I'm a college student, 25 years old, went to Lawrence North. Been on the Trump train since day one, 2016. And I've been very focused on immigration since then, but me and Daniel were just talking, realized we have a lot in common, and we think we're really filling a void with this organization. And that was what really inspired me to be here.
So my first question is, a couple weeks ago, Trump said something about how there's 55 million people with visas. And Twitter started running with that, and they thought, 55 million? Now, not all of them are here. Some of them might be abroad. What do you think about that? And would you use the word crisis to describe the situation?
Oh, without a doubt, it is a crisis. We should end birthright citizenship. I mean, that's the first step we should take. Is we don't want to allow anchor babies to be a thing where people can just come in and have a baby, and now that child is a full-fledged citizen. That's not the intent of birthright citizenship. That's not what was the founders ever envisioned, was more of these anchor baby stories. It was for a specific need in that time, and now we don't need that anymore. And so I think it is a crisis. I think immigration is probably one of the things that is sinking our ship probably faster than anything else. Not because we're against immigration, but because it's been done so flippantly, poorly, and illegally in many cases. And we've got to start doing it with wisdom. And I've actually called for a moratorium on all immigration until we clean up the problem, because we have, some estimates are 20 million illegal immigrants that are here, probably more, if we're being honest. And I just don't think we can continue to go down this path where you have 20 million people who are taking up our resources, things that should be going towards American citizens, they are now consuming, and that's not right. It's not actually, and it's not a godly thing to allow that to continue to happen either. And so, so I've called for that. I think Donald Trump's doing a fantastic job. I think he's really setting the stage for coming back to a semblance of normal immigration that's healthy. And but it's going to take some time to get back to that. So, and so that's why I've said, hey, let's pause immigration until we can get back to a semblance of health, and then we can say, okay, now we ask for the world to send us their best and their brightest.
Yep. So recently you kind of got in the news about a tweet regarding the Haitians in Indiana. There's about 40,000, I think, either statewide or in Indianapolis.
Statewide.
Statewide,
15,000 in Indianapolis.
Yep. and the temporary protective status. Can you talk about kind of your history on this issue before you're running for lieutenant governor, and then kind of the context of the tweet?
Yeah, so the temporary protected status is asylum status. So it's basically people who are seeking asylum. I've been very outspoken that we've just been given blanket asylum status to many groups of people, which is not what the law really says. I believe the law says we need to do it by case basis. What Biden did, he basically said all the Haitians can come here under TPS. Like the whole group can come over. I think that's actually illegal. Attorney General Todd Rokita is actually working to potentially file a suit against the federal government to actually void that because it was done under an illegal auspice that we shouldn't have done in the first place. So, but now they are here. We allowed them to come here under temporary protected status. I was very outspoken on the campaign trail about Logansport, Washington, Indiana, places that have been flooded with Haitians, and it's not healthy. It's not a good thing for our society. However, we were the ones that made the mistake. It wasn't the Haitians. If I was a Haitian living in what they were living in, and the Biden administration opened up the door, I would have come through too. I would have grabbed as many people as I possibly could. It wasn't their fault. They are here now, and they came here legally. This is not an illegal immigration thing. And so I met with a group of Haitian pastors to explain to them, hey, we need you to do your job as pastors. You need to be taking care of the poor. You need to be feeding those that don't have food. You need to be teaching them English. You need to be doing your job because the government's not going to do it for you, and don't ask for it. And so it's very much, you're here, we understand that you're here, and we got to treat them respectfully because we were the ones that let them in the door. Mm-hmm. So this was our fault. Now, again, I disagree with the Biden administration all day long, but they did it. And so there's an integrity piece where we have to live out on our end of the deal. Now, I do think when it comes to TPS, temporary protected status, the saving grace for us is that it's temporary, mm-hmm. right? This was not a forever thing. We need to make sure that it doesn't become a forever thing, and we need to help them be relocated into either Haiti or somewhere else in the world that will welcome them into a more than temporary status. If they want to come back through the front door, that's fine. They can get in line like everybody else and apply for citizenship. But in the meantime, we need to move them on because we gave them the temporary status. But unfortunately, these temporary statuses run out, and then nobody ever knows what happens. And That's what happened in Logansport. It's like, oh, well, we think they're gone, but nobody knows. And most likely, we all know that they're not gone. They're just now living here illegally. So that's not healthy, and that's not friendly. That's not being kind to them. They can't grow. They can't become better citizens and create the family that they want if they're here living in the shadows. So we need to not enable that.
So just to be clear, you support ending the temporary protective status
100%,
for Haitians?
100%.
So you do not want them here. You're not the one opening the front door to bring them in.
Yeah, it never, and I've been very outspoken against the Biden administration for doing that because I knew what it was going to cause. It caused what it did. But at the same time, they're human beings, right? They're made in God's image. Just because they're Haitian doesn't mean we treat them with any less dignity than we would treat anybody else. And so as lieutenant governor, because they're in my state legally, I have a duty to sit down with them and encourage them to do their jobs. And again, it was a group of pastors, and I am a pastor. So I understand that, it's not the government's job to feed people. It's the church's job to feed people. It's not the government's job to, make every public school teach Creole, right? It's if they want their Creole-speaking children to acclimate to English, then have an after-school English program at their church that they hire the tutor and bring them in and do it that way. But to think that the government should do that, and that was kind of the conversation. A lot of them were saying, what can the government do for us? I said, well, we gave you a protected status. That's what we did for you. Now you need to do your part and actually teach your people how to be good citizens while they're here, or good neighbors, not citizens, but good neighbors while they're here, and to be a part of the general population. We don't want to just wall them off and put them in a section of Indianapolis, because that will just destroy that section of Indianapolis, and it'll just fester like a really bad day that just continues to get worse and worse for everybody around the state. So again, it might sound harsh to say that, but I think that's the loving thing to say, because we want the best for them, but we also have a duty to steward what God has given us, which is our fellow citizens. and they're not citizens. We want to be a good neighbor, but the same way you would never just open up your house and let the whole neighborhood come in and eat your food, sleep in your bed, take your clothes. You'd say, no, there's a proper way to come in and be a guest, and there's an improper way to come in and abuse what I have here. So,
you mentioned the thing about Creole. Would you support requiring English language only for all government services or most government services provided by Indiana? Because the English as a second language ESL thing is a massive drain on all schools in our state. And I'm sure you've heard people in rural Indiana complaining about how they have to have on-call Haitian Creole translators for courts and schools, and it takes up such a huge portion of their budget. Would you support doing English only?
Absolutely. I've said that for many years, that we should formalize English as the national language. Our documents should only be in English. When you go to get your license, when you go to do anything that has to do with government, it should be in English. And here's why. It's because if you can't read English, you will never be a successful citizen of this nation. And we want people to be successful. We want people who immigrate here to be very successful. And if we enable them to stay speaking a foreign language, a different language than what is the national language, we're enabling them to just stay in the bottom rung of the ladder. And the American dream is that everyone can climb the ladder. And so I've always said English needs to be the official standard and language that everyone adheres to when they're dealing with government agencies, schools. And so I've been advocating for that for a long time. I will continue to do so. I think the state and the federal government should make a statute that basically says, hey, English is our national language, and this is what you're going to need to know in order to take part in this society. And think about the safety on the roads. I mean, that's just a real practical one. I mean, if you can't read English, you're not going to be a safe driver. And we're giving out licenses to people that can't read English. I'm thinking to myself, how do you drive? How do you know what the sign says? The warning sign up ahead. These are very serious issues that could have detrimental and deadly consequences for people who are citizens here in the United States. And we need to protect our citizens from damage that could be done like that.
Especially if they're driving semi-trucks.
Yeah, no kidding.
And how extensive is this training?
Yeah.
So one more thing, something else we wanted to talk about is in Dearborn, Michigan, I'm sure you're familiar, it's about 50% Muslim right now. Recently, they changed the police emblem in that city to have something with Arabic. And there was a man who came up because the city was trying to honor a terrorist, and the mayor, someone in the office, called him Islamophobic for opposing that.
And he also said there's no place welcome for you in my town.
Right.
Yeah.
He's calling the shots.
Yeah.
And then also, there's elected officials like Ilhan Omar and Zohran Mamdani and these types who I would say get into office, represent their community, and do not represent American values. What would you kind of say about that? How can we prevent it? Because these people are here legally. Mm-hmm. They came here on visas. It's not a matter of law enforcement. It's something deeper than that. What would you kind of have to say about that?
We got a fundamental problem with our fundamentals, right? And that's we are a Christian nation, but we are increasingly becoming a non-Christian people. So a Christian government, a Christian value system. So the Judeo-Christian ethic, the Decalogue, Leviticus 19, Blackstone's common law was taken right from Scripture. Our founders took right from that to create the system of governance. It's all based in the Judeo-Christian ethic. So while someone like an Ilhan Omar is welcome to be here legally, that does not mean she has a right to change the foundations of this nation. That the Supreme Court just ruled in the Kennedy case that long-standing historical tradition is the constitutional precedent. So what's the long-standing historical tradition in America? It's Christian values. It was not rooted in Islam. It was not rooted in socialism, Marxism. It was rooted in Christian, Judeo-Christian ethic and capitalism. And so when a socialist Marxist like Mamdani tries to force his values onto New York, I would say, no, you're not welcome to do that, because the longstanding historical tradition is constitutional. What you're bringing is something new. You're trying to remove the foundations. And just like trying to take a house and move it off its foundations, it's going to destroy the house. And so it is okay to say that the Judeo-Christian ethic takes precedent, because that is the longstanding historical tradition in our society. That's how we became a great society, was Western values, which are rooted in Christian values. And so what I see in Dearborn is very concerning. I called it out. I was one of the first people to post about that in the state of Indiana when I saw that Arabic on that shield, that badge. This is absolutely unacceptable. People in Dearborn need to deal with this. And we've created massive problems by Somali immigrants dropping them in Dearborn and Minneapolis. And now they are beginning to grow, and they're beginning to take over the government. And that's what Islam says: peacefully grow, then peacefully take over the government, and then be not so peaceful once you have control.
And we saw that with Ilhan Omar's statement about Charlie Kirk. It was like disgusting. She should have been censored from Congress for that statement.
Yeah.
The fact that she came here as a refugee, sponsored by a church, and then is talking about like great patriots like Charlie Kirk, like that's really bad.
Yeah.
My question is about, I'll be a little personal, and you don't have to agree with this, and you can distance yourself from it, but I grew up in a small town, Auburn, Indiana, and I have nothing but good memories. Now I live in Indianapolis, and when I go to Costco or when I go to playgrounds in Carmel or Westfield with my children, most of the people there, their grandparents didn't build Indiana. They're new. I don't know anybody who voted for that. And our fabric is changing fundamentally. It's not just ideas, it's the people are being swapped.
Yeah.
So my question is, 1 to 100, how much do you think that small-town Indiana is losing its identity? And let's say, I have a follow-up question after that. 1 to 100, how much is small-town Indiana losing its identity?
I think it's losing it quick. I don't know on a scale of 1 to 100 where I'd put it, but I would say in places like Westfield, it's very high. I see it. I live in Hamilton County, and Hamilton County is not the Hamilton County 20 years ago. It's not even the Hamilton County 5 years ago. I mean, the fact that Fishers is having drag shows in public tells me that the culture is very drastically shifting. And I've said this, and I've taken heat for it, but I'll say it again. I'll say it loud for the people in the back. I'm against multiculturalism, because multiculturalism is a very destructive force. You can't have multiple cultures without a very hostile environment that's ripe with conflict. And so what I've said, immigration is great, multi-ethnicity is very good, but it has to submit under one culture. So what we're dealing with, when you say, I see Westfield, and this is happening, well, you're seeing even, we'll break it down to as simple as Chicago culture. You see a lot of people immigrating to Westfield from Chicago, right, or from Illinois. People that don't have Indiana values. They don't have that God and country fabric, and they come from California, Chicago, the East Coast, and they bring in their own culture. They want to push their culture now on what was the foundation of a place like Westfield. And you're seeing Westfield change drastically too. I mean, they were actively supporting the LGBTQ movement, Pride Fest. I mean, they changed their whole, during June, they had all the rainbow stuff on their social medias in Westfield. Now, this is Westfield. This was a farm country with people who knew God's word, people who, were patriots, and now you're looking at it, you're like, what is happening? Again, it's because new cultures come in, pushed out the old culture, and that's happening on a small scale like Westfield, and it's also happening on a major scale like the whole United States, where you're seeing cultures of the world come into the U.S. and push out the amazing history and heritage that made the United States the greatest nation on the face of the earth.
So my follow-up question to that is, if you had to pick a number, 1 to 100, to what extent is small-town Indiana losing its identity?
Well, I think in the donut counties, it's probably like pretty close to 100. I mean, I would say it's high up, maybe 90. I mean, it's not the same. I mean, ask anybody who's lived here for 30 years in Hamilton County, Johnson County, Hendricks County. They'll say it's changed drastically. Now that could be development. It could be business booming, which isn't a bad thing. That's fine to grow when it comes to economics. But I think if you ask them, hey, what about your schools? That's a good indicator. Like if you're talking about the fabric of the moral identity of a culture, of a people, of a society or a town, ask them about what's going on in their schools. And I think that will give you an insight to really where the temperature is on, are you protecting your heritage and your culture, or are you losing it? And again, you look at some of these schools, and it has been, HSC, up until just a few years ago when they flipped the board back to some decent board members, they were just ground zero for BLM, for LGBTQ movement, for anti-American hostility. It was crazy. It was right in central Indiana and Fishers in here in Fishers. And so I think look at your schools. That will give you the pulse. Now, when I go to places like Jay County, I mean Jay County, I think it's pretty fitting that their mascot is the Patriot. I was up there the other day. Fantastic school, great public school system. Their superintendent, their teachers, they're patriots. They're God and country type people. They want truth. They are protecting their culture, and they're doing it well. And but so I can't say it's a one number for the whole state. I think we have pockets of places that are saying we're seeing it slip away, and we have pockets of places that we're seeing them stand up and defend it.
So my follow-up question is, my assumption is that Europe is basically 15, 20 years ahead of us.
Yeah.
And we have the blessing to see that as a blinking red light.
Yeah.
So then the question is, if the donut counties are at a 90 of 100 in terms of losing their identity, at what point is it like a Pearl Harbor moment in which all hands on deck, we need to do something differently? And what I mean by that is, if an intruder came into your home and was wrapping his hands around your neck, obviously everything in you is going to fight back. But if an intruder puts carbon monoxide under your door and you just start to get sleepy, and a few hours later you fall asleep.
Yeah.
So at what point is it a Pearl Harbor situation where it may be too far and we've lost our identity irrevocably?
Well, out of every Pearl Harbor situation that we've ever had in America, the silver lining is we've woken up and we've fought back and we've overcome. Now it's been through great heartache, through great sacrifice, bloodshed, tears, pain, but we've overcome. And I think that we are feeling the Pearl Harbor moment right now. Things that have just happened with Charlie Kirk, what we've seen in our schools the last few years after COVID, sort of highlighted everything that was going on in our schools.
Ice shooting.
Yes, the ice shooting that just happened. Yep. And so we're seeing this Pearl Harbor, 5-alarm fire, kind of the bells going off in our heads, and I think people are starting to get it. I think I'm very optimistic that people are saying, okay, enough's enough. And again, does that mean it's going to be easy? No, it means that we're probably just getting ready to start fighting. Now, I do think that one of the ways that we fight is that we enact good policy. Well, okay, schools are ground zero right now. I believe that's where a lot of this is coming from. It's coming from our schools. Well, one thing we just did this past session, and it took a lot of heat, but guys like Senator Byrne were strong, and they carried a good bill, and we got partisan school board bill passed. That means now you can declare a party when you run, which tells you a lot about somebody's ideology when they put an R or a D next to their name. An R, not always, but most of the time says that you're pro-America. A D, not always, but most of the time says you're anti-America.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's pretty simple. And so now people are going to be able to say, hey, I'm pro-American values or I'm anti-American values. Or if they hide and they keep the nonpartisanship, you'll say, why are you hiding? And so I do think that that's a great thing that we did. Now, there were a lot of Republicans that didn't vote for it, but we had a majority in the House and Senate that did vote for it, and the governor signed it into law. I think it was fantastic, and it will help curb the tide a little bit just on kind of what we're seeing with our culture slipping away, specifically in our schools.
I testified on that, and so did you. There's probably about 10 people there fighting for partisan school board things, and there's a lot of kind of like older Republicans who are behind the times, and they still think it's the situation from the 1980s. But we know, like, the situation is really, really bad, and that kind of ties into the next thing, which is, so obviously Charlie Kirk recently passed away very tragically 2 weeks ago, and he really, through the last probably few years of his life, he had a very strong message about, like, fight, 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 we're going to war. Keeping that in mind, what sort of are the broad immigration goals you would like to accomplish by the end of your term? Because you were elected last November, you were put in office in January. Keeping in mind that we need to be all hands on deck, what would you say would be like the best case scenario for where immigration policy in Indiana will go from now to then?
Well, keep in mind, immigration is a federal issue. Mm-hmm. So me being a statewide office holder, I have very little to do with immigration other than using my platform to highlight what's going on. So my goal for the next 3.5 years is to highlight the immigration problem that we have in America. I continue to use my platform to do it in a way that's Christ-like, but also brings a lot of justice and fairness to the situation and to the system. I think President Trump, I will continue to encourage him, to push him to do what he's doing. He's doing a great job. Like I said earlier, I think he's right on when it comes to immigration. Kristi Noem, Tom Holman, they're doing a fantastic job as well. So I think as state officials, one of the best things we can do is make sure that we support ICE and make sure that we are helping the federal government any way we can. So, and Governor Braun has already been very clear. I've been clear. Our Attorney General Todd Rokita has been clear that we are going to be a state that cooperates and helps ICE. We're not going to be a California that starts to threaten ICE agents and say, take off your masks so people can see who you are and they can come to your home and kill you, just like Gavin Mussolini was saying to do the other day. So, yeah.
Okay, is there like 2 or 3 goals that statewide, like very actionable, you would like to accomplish by the end of your term?
On immigration? Mm-hmm. So one, I'd love to see Todd Rokita and the legislature really go after sanctuary cities and sanctuary sheriffs. There's some sheriffs in places like St. Joe County that are not cooperating with ICE, and they're doing everything they can to just really be a roadblock for ICE and deportations. And so Todd Rokita is doing a great job going after sheriffs like that, but it might take some legislation to do that. So I'd love to see that addressed to where you can't have a rogue, just far left, sheriff or county that's just saying, hey, we're going to put up a roadblock. Bloomington's the same way, and we need to make sure that we stand with our federal law enforcement agents when they're dealing with things like immigration, because if we don't do that, if we don't allow that to happen and help to make that happen, then it's just going to essentially we're just band-aiding the problem, and a few years from now, God forbid another Biden gets into office, it's just going to be worse than it ever was.
How about mandatory e-verify for private companies?
I think it'd be great. Yeah, I think that's one way we could do it as well. I'm all for that. I think you start holding the private companies accountable, and you'll fix this real quick. You dry up the source, and it fixes it very quickly.
To wrap it up, we'd like to introduce to you this new grassroots organization. Imagine, a year from now, there are 10,000 Hoosiers that are active in helping you and the Attorney General advance your immigration goals. So our vision is, I'm going to read our vision and our mission to you and just kind of get your feedback, what resonates for you and what advice you might have for us. So first of all, our origin story is we're friends who realized the world we grew up in is being destroyed. We came to this in different ways. Maybe you went back to your hometown and it was filled with strangers. Or you wonder why kids don't play outside anymore. We asked, who represents Hoosiers who want to preserve our way of life? No one. If we don't, our home will be erased. So we're banding together to take back our state. This is what thousands of patriots are waiting for. Will you fight with us? So that's our origin story.
That's great.
Our vision is, we envision a state full of communities that are safe, prosperous, and beautiful. Our grandchildren will be able to ride bikes around their neighborhoods and play basketball on the hoop of their barns. It would be a place that our ancestors would recognize and be proud of. So I want to see, what about that resonates for you? And what advice do you have for us? And then I guess a third thing is, why hasn't somebody already done this? How did we get to the position that we're in? Why has Carmel changed so much in 5 years? How could we have let that happen?
We have forgotten the ways of our founding fathers. We've forgotten the ways in the faith of our founding fathers. There's a book called The Suicide of a Free People by Os Guinness, and it's a great book. And in it, he has this golden triangle of freedom. And it's a triangle, and each point has a different quality. And you have freedom, virtue, and faith. And what he says in this triangle is that freedom requires virtue, but virtue requires faith, and faith requires freedom. So it's just kind of a revolving cycle. And why can't our kids ride through the streets of our communities maybe like they once could? Why can't they play outside and just mom and dad say, hey, be home by dark, And I mean, that's how it was when I was growing up. Mom and dad would just be like, hey, just be home before dinner. They don't know where I'm at. I'm out riding my bike. I could be on the other side of the county. I would just be home by dark, right? And they wouldn't worry. They knew that it was safe, right? Well, why has that gone away? Well, I say it has gone away because we lack people of virtue. Okay, well, so I don't have the freedom now to send my children, who I have, out into the community. So the freedom's gone because I don't trust that people of virtue are flooding this community. Well, why are people of virtue not here anymore? Because we've lost our faith. We don't have faith anymore. We've thrown out the ways of the ancient truth of God's word, all right? And without faith, you're going to begin to lose your freedom. And it'll just begin to be a downward cycle that continues to get worse and worse and worse. So how do you restore it?
Can I
Yeah,
interrupt?
please.
Of all the places in Indiana, the ones that have changed the most, the donut counties, would you say that they've lost their faith the most?
100%, without a doubt.
Why? What happened?
You get different cultures. You get people of different cultures that come in and say, we don't need this, we don't want this, or they're hostile to it. I'll just use the drag show example. So Fishers, as I said earlier, there's been a culture that has been promoting drag shows in Fishers. Where'd that come from? Well, it came from people who think it's okay to sexualize children in public, right? To dress up as men dressing up as women, dancing in public, putting their private parts close to a child, and getting dollar bills shoved into their panties. I mean, I hate to say it, but that's what's happening. I mean, I have pictures from that in Fishers. And so how did that happen? Well, obviously, we've allowed people to flood our cities, and we haven't taught them the virtuous ways of our past. We've said, you can come in and you can bring whatever virtue or quality that you believe is true, right, and good, and just bring it in. Well, they're bringing things that aren't virtuous. They aren't people of faith. They are people who don't know God, and so they're bringing things that aren't not of God. And you cannot have a free people if you do not have a people who know God. So John Adams said, I'm not saying that. John Adams said, our Constitution is wholly inadequate except for a religious and moral people. I mean, that's it. And so we aren't moral because we lost our faith. Therefore, we lost our faith. We're not going to have our Constitution that protects our liberties, and we'll lose our liberties. That is the progression we are now in.
Do you think there's kind of a problem with like right-wingers and conservatives where whenever there's an institution that we lose, such as like a city or a church or a school, our first instinct is always, I'm going to run away. Like some people in Fishers probably lived there 5-10 years ago. They saw the drag show.
Sure.
Then they move up to Westfield. They move up to Noblesville. Same thing happened in Indianapolis probably 30 years ago. Happens with churches. The pastor said something I didn't like. I'm going to leave. Do you think that's sort of like how can we solve that? Do we just need to tell people like stay and fight where you are? Like we need your energy here,
Yeah.
or is it sometimes the only solution is to leave and kind of bring your energy someplace else?
Yeah, it's a great question. When do you abandon ship, right? I think that's the $1 million question, and I think it's there's not a one size fits all answer to that. I think you have to use discernment. Certainly, I look at it like the Titanic, place like Fishers, place like the donut counties, if you will. From a cultural, moral perspective, it's like the Titanic. I think people might look at the donut counties and say, oh, well, they're booming economically. Okay, that's fine, but they're dying morally. And so if I found myself back into the era of the Titanic, would I get on the boat? Yeah, probably I would. I probably would. Knowing what I know now, I would probably get on the boat so that I can go to the captain and help divert the boat so that thousands or hundreds of people didn't die. You know what I'm saying? So
Like Jonah.
Like Jonah, right? Now, would I move my family onto the boat with me? Would I have my family, my kids, and my wife go on the boat with me? No way. No, I would not do that. I would say, honey, kids, I've got work to do. I've got a mission. There's people that are desperately in trouble. They don't even know it yet. And I'm going to go and I'm going to actually work to, right the ship. However, that's kind of where, we've got to decide, okay, do I move my family? Do I move my life away from this ever degrading moral cesspool that is happening in places like the Donut County? Or do I stay and fight? Or maybe it's, my kids don't go into that school system, but I'm going to work in that school system so that I can help be the change that's positive. Yeah. I think it's every person's going to be led by God differently. And I think people of faith need to understand God may be calling your family, you, to do something totally different than he's calling someone else's family to do. So some families, it might be right for them to move. right? Other families or people, it might be right for them to stay and help be the change that brings positive growth back towards what's right, good, virtuous, and true.
Very good.
Before we do the rapid fire thing,
Yeah.
one last question
Yeah.
is, okay, we've talked a couple times now. What do you see in us that you think is good that we should grow, and especially with immigration and that? What does Indiana need that we might be able to contribute to?
Well, I think you're educating people. I think that's the first thing. Hosea 4:6 says, "My people perish for lack of knowledge." People just don't know what they don't know. I think people have no clue that this is even happening, that the culture is being stolen right out from underneath their eyes. And so I think we have to open people's eyes. We've got to say, hey, do you even know that this is happening? So what you're doing with podcasts, how you guys are addressing this is really important. And it's not an easy topic. I mean, you're going to be labeled all the ists. You're going to be called all the names in the book because you're going to be seen as unloving, right? I always tell people, it's like, no, it's not unloving to care for the people that God has placed in your stewardship. And that's not the whole world. That's the people of this community that are here legally. Care for them. You can't take in the whole world. Unfortunately, we just can't open up our doors to take in everyone. But most people don't think of it in the depth that you're thinking of it to understand the consequences of what happens when you have a Joe Biden and an incredibly incompetent administration before this Trump administration. You know, Biden's administration was awful. And people just say, oh, well, it's a loving thing to do. Wow, their whole life is being destroyed underneath their feet. And so I think you guys have an important role. I'm thankful that you're doing this, but it's all about educating and then equipping and activating, right? So educate people, equip them with the knowledge and the skills, and then activate them to go out and actually make the difference.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you for that, and thank you for the whole interview. The last thing we want to do, kind of a rapid fire questions. There's 7 of them. Yes or no, maybe one sentence, but we want to get through these quick. Do you support ending birthright citizenship?
Yes.
Should we have an immigration moratorium until we figure out what the hell's going on?
Yes.
Should we swiftly deport all of the illegals?
Yes.
Should we limit foreign students at Indiana colleges?
Yes.
Do you support E-Verify for private companies with penalties?
Yes.
Do you support criminalizing landlords who rent to illegals?
Yes.
And then do you support requiring English only for all government services?
Yep.
All right, great. That
There we
says
go.
everything right now, all the hot button issues we went through.
Yeah, it's great. Those
Yep.
are good questions, guys.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.